Zoo-wee mama! I'm back today to talk about Toxin, the newest card coming to Marvel Snap, and whether I think he'll be worth a buy or if he is a bit of a bust. Now, I will say just up front, Toxin has the most community hype of any card this season. Okay, I've seen your guys' ratings and predictions, and a lot of people think Toxin is going to be amazing. Some people think he's going to be OP. So I'm going to talk about if I think that is true or not. Now, Toxin is coming to Spotlight this next week alongside the newly reworked Zabu and Elsa Bloodstone. Toxin is a 2-cost, 1-powered card with the ability on reveal, return your other cards here to your hand, and Toxin himself will get +2 power for each card that he returns. So he's a new bounce card to the game, and instead of something like Beast where he's giving a discount to the bounce card, he himself is just powering up. So let's start by looking at some of Toxin's best synergies. Okay, off the bat, we are looking at some bounce cards. Okay, I mean, he is bouncing, and he's going to love great bounce targets like the Hood, where you can get multiple demons to your hand, but get rid of the -3 downside on the board. We've got Beast. Of course, they're going to be working in the same deck together because they love a lot of the same cards, right? They're bouncing things back. You could even do an infinite bounce loop here, okay? I say infinite, you are going to run out of turns and out of energy, but you could play Toxin and then bounce him back with Beast, and then bounce Beast back with Toxin. I mean, there just might be some kind of fun shenanigans going on there. And you can look outside of a traditional bounce list. You can look to more, move-centric bounce, something with like Human Torch, where Human Torch can get really big and strong, but he can obviously die to Shang-Chi if he gets big enough. He can die to Killmonger. Shadow King takes away his power, and so you can bounce him back to protect him from getting countered and then replay him on the final turn. Now, some things that Toxin doesn't love seeing. Obviously, we got Shadow King in here. Okay, Toxin is powering up himself. He gets hit with a Shadow King. He's down to just 1 power. Okay, that is pretty bad. Something like Ghost or Invisible Woman become really strong in bounce metas. Okay, Toxin is a bounce card, whether you're playing him in full bounce or bounce hybrid, he's a bounce card. If he becomes meta and bounce stays really strong in the meta, and it's already been pretty good, Ghost and Invisible Woman can really counter that. You'll see them played in like Sarah decks, and you hide your Killmonger behind that Ghost or behind the Invisible Woman, and they make sure to just kill all those bounce targets because they give up priority that way. So that can be tough for bounce decks to deal with. To dive deeper into the good and the bad for Toxin, let's start with the good. First up, we have the first new bounce card since launch. Okay, the first card that's actually bouncing targets back, because Beast and Falcon have just been in the game like forever. So this is just a third new bounce card. We have not seen this before. We don't know what it's like having 3 possible bounce options in the game. This is going to be awesome. Okay, his power is going to range from a 2-3 or 2-5 or 2-7 depending on how many cards he bounces back. Those are all pretty good. I mean, Falcon's a 2-3. Beast is a 3-5, okay? So if Toxin ends up as a 2-3, that's not horrible. If he's a 2-5 bouncing 2 things back, it's just good stats to have along with this pretty strong ability. We know bouncing cards for fairly cheap, 2 energy, is a strong ability, okay? He does have a clear home in bounce, but he is still 2 energy. It might be worthwhile to experiment with him in other decks, other archetypes. Okay, Beast over time has seen play in a few kind of hybrid type decks, like the Move one I mentioned. I'll show that later. I've also put together another deck for Toxin that I'll show in this video. And so it's worth trying to experiment with him in other homes because he is only 2 costs, so he might be a little flexible. Okay, I'm not completely confident of it, but it's worth trying out. And then again, I mentioned that he can actually bounce back Beast, and then Beast can bounce him back, and they can keep going at it. Beast currently can't be bounced, right? Because you have Falcon. Falcon is only bouncing 1-cost cards. So you currently just don't have a way to really bounce back Beast unless you do like Beast into Absorbing Man, which is just really awkward and, clunky and a needed specific combo. With Toxin, you can actually bounce back that Beast pretty easily. Now, in terms of the downsides for Toxin, there's not too many, but while I mentioned it might be cool to have a 3rd bounce card, what if he's competing? What if these bounce decks, you like just having 2 activators that are bouncing, and the rest of the cards being good bounce targets or things that are powering up from the bounce? So do you replace Falcon with Toxin? What if Toxin doesn't make the cut? What if you just keep Beast and Falcon and he's not needed, right? It's kind of something to think about. I'm assuming Toxin is better than Falcon. He can do similar type thing, but just get more power if he's often at 2-5 even. He does need to be played off curve to power up more. If you're going to be hitting 2 or 3 targets, you can't play him right on turn 2. You can play him on turn 3 or maybe turn 4 if you're doing like Beast on turn 3. You're going to have to kind of figure out the best turn to play him on. It's not going to be the same every game. It is going to depend on how well you draw and how well you can play bounce, because not everyone is a good bounce player. And I'm not convinced that he is very flexible. Again, we'll have to find out for sure, but it is possible he is just a strict bounce card, and outside of that isn't really worth playing. Here's just my friendly reminder to give this video a like and subscribe to the channel if you have not already, because we cover every single new card in Marvel Snap. Now, to visualize Toxin's floor and his ceiling, he actually has a pretty straightforward floor and ceiling, and I think his average is pretty obvious as well. In terms of his floor, it's just that he does nothing to bounce back or he doesn't get countered. You're really never gonna just play him on tempo. You're not gonna just play him on as a 2-1, even if your draws are bad. But if he does get hit with Shadow King, or maybe you went to bounce something, but your opponent played a Juggernaut that turn and hit Toxin away, or they played Killmonger and killed, but you were gonna bounce back. Being a 2-1 is not viable, nor is it competitive. But Toxin's ceiling is that you're hitting 3 great targets to bounce back to your hand, and Toxin himself is a 2-7. Okay, so you've got a 2-7, which is a fantastic stat line, and he's setting up a combo. Okay, he's helping your other pieces be able to re-trigger, replay them. That's just overpowered. If he was guaranteed to be a 2-7 every time, okay, that's insane value. On average, though, I'm not sure if he's overpowered on average. I think you can look to bounce back 2 good targets and have him be a 2-5, right? Again, the energy is going to matter. The curve when you play him, the order of when you're playing a Beast and when you're playing Toxin, you're going to kind of have to figure out the best time to slap him down. I think you're going to look to hit at least 2 targets. Beast is better for setting up combos because he does give the -1 energy cost to whatever he bounces back. Toxin doesn't. So sometimes you may actually not want to bounce back too much because you may not have the energy to replay those 3 cards, okay? But if you just bounce back 2 1-cost cards, he's a 2-5, and then you can go ahead and play those again if needed. And so I think that's a good level. I'm not sure it's overpowered, but it is just a really good stat line. Again, that's 2 more power than Falcon, and if you needed to, you could bounce back like a 2 or 3-cost card. You don't have to only bounce back 1-cost cards like Falcon. So to kick off the first of 3 decks that I have prepared for Toxin, first up, we're looking just at a strong Agent Venom bounce list here. This is very similar to the one KX played to hit like rank 1 right when Agent Venom came out. So we got a bounce deck. I have taken out Falcon and I've put in Toxin. Okay, now a few of the pieces here you can swap out as you see fit. It is bounce, you know, just any cards that work in a bounce deck, you can try rotating them in. With Agent Venom here, it is really good. And Agent Venom works well with Toxin too. With Falcon, if Agent Venom does hit him, he's only given Falcon +1 power. But Agent Venom is giving Toxin +3 power. Okay, so he's given even more of a power boost. If Toxin was a 2-4, and then he bounced back 3 things, he's now a 2-10. Okay, that's huge value. And so the rest of this deck works like a standard bounce list. We do have the new Black Swan in here with her redesign that happened somewhat recently. So even though Toxin isn't giving that energy discount when he bounces things back, if you did trigger Black Swan, you might have just bounced back a bunch of 1-cost cards that are free the next turn anyways because of Black Swan. Next up, we've got a bounce and move deck. Now this is one of those homes where Beast has seen a lot of play. Okay, outside just a standard bounce list, Beast has seen play with the Human Torch to again bounce him back, let you replay the combo with Ghost Spider and Human Torch again, just get a massive Human Torch, but also keeps him safe because you're often giving up priority when you bounce him back, and then you play him on the last turn when your opponent has priority and they cannot hit Human Torch with Shang-Chi or Shadow King. Okay, now We do also have Agony in here, okay, the new card reward through high voltage mode. I think Agony could be great with Human Torch, and then you bounce him back, and he's just going to ramp up a bit quicker. And this list is a bit greedy with the bounce. We do have Toxin, Falcon, and Beast. Okay, that's 3 bounce activators. So more bounce than this deck is normally used to. It might be too much. It may be worth it to either cut Falcon or Toxin and not have all 3 of them. Because in this case, you are really focusing on getting a really strong Human Torch or Dagger. Okay, those are the really cheap ones you'll want to power up a big. Vulture is a bit too expensive to be wanting to bounce back multiple times, but you do have Madam Web to help select targets. So you get a really big Human Torch and or Dagger, and then you slap down that Living Tribunal, get a nice power spread across the board. And lastly, interestingly enough, I've put Toxin in this mill deck, and we do have Misery in here, a pretty new card to Marvel Snap as well. Second Dinner has said, by the way, that Misery will be changed to a 4-cost, 8-powered card soon. They did give that notice through the Discord before she rotated out of spotlights in case more people wanted to get her with that change. So she'll be a 4-8. And the rest of this deck is pretty standard mill except for Toxin. But what I really like here is I love Misery in the mill archetype. You can play the Hood plus Yondu plus Misery on top to just re-trigger the Hood in Yondu, for example, or re-trigger Yondu in Cable. Well, if you didn't draw Misery, maybe you have Toxin. Okay, so now you can play the Hood and Yondu and then Toxin on top of them to replay the Hood and replay Yondu. Or maybe even do Toxin on top of Yondu and Cable to replay those cards to mill your opponent more. So I'm really using Toxin almost as like a Grand Master or Absorbing Man here, but it's a cheap card, it's only 2 cost. He's going to power up, he's going to become a 2-3 or 2-5 himself, and he can bounce back multiple things that you can play again to re-trigger. So similar kind of role there. I'm not sure how well he fits in here. Even though he's only 2 costs, it could turn out to be a bit clunky just with move order and sequencing, but I think it's worth experimenting with. Now it's time to talk about this Spotlight Week. So from October 22nd to the 29th, we have Toxin alongside Zabu and Elsa. Now in terms of being competitive, I think it's okay still. Elsa is still in a bit of an awkward position, in my opinion. She's okay, she's not horrible, but she's definitely not the best, and she just feels very replaceable. Often if you just want to put in Hope Summers, it's a fine replacement or an even a better option than her. Now with Zabu, he did get recently reworked, and he's better than he has been the past couple months. He still doesn't seem nearly as good as he used to be. Okay, definitely not as good as he was on first release, and then even after his first change, he was still, arguably one of the best cards in the game for like a year. He's not at that level. He does seem to have good potential, but I'm not sure how much of a meta-defining card he is anymore. And frankly, a lot of people own him. Okay, he was a Season Pass card, and then he was like the best card in the game forever. So I know a lot of people just own Zabu, and if you don't, he is only Series 4. He's just 3,000 tokens. So if the meta does change a bit more to revolve around him soon, then he's easy just to pick up with tokens. So from a competitive standpoint, it's an okay Spotlight Week. Not the worst, but nothing crazy. The variants, I also think they're okay. The Toxin one is good. It's the Pandart Studio. The Zabu is the Sean Galloway. It's kind of this nice cartoony style. It's not something I usually prefer, but I do think it is well done. I think it's kind of a cool variant. And the Elsa one is also fairly cool, but nothing insane here. Okay, art is subjective. But for me, there's nothing here that really pops out like, oh, I 100% need this variant. So in my opinion, it's just okay. And now it's time to give my final prediction and ratings for Toxin, as well as the community ratings, okay, that you guys voted on in the poll that I put with my season preview video. I'm a bit surprised by the ratings for Toxin. Honestly, I feel like the previous cards have been pretty close, my ratings in the community. For Toxin, you guys are really hyped on him, okay? And so really what I'm most surprised with is the flexibility ratings. For me, I don't think Toxin is flexible. I think he's stuck to bounce. Maybe there's a bit of a mention for the move bounce list where Beast does see play. Maybe you do slot Toxin in there alongside a Beast and or Falcon like the deck I showed, or maybe you even replace one of those cards with Toxin. Okay, maybe it's Falcon or maybe even Beast in some homes. I mentioned the mill deck might be worth trying out. I'm not 100% certain of that though. One thing I do know is that Toxin will work in bounce. Okay, whether he's 100% needed in bounce, whether he's better than Beast in that home and better than Falcon, that's to be seen, but he's gonna work in bounce. Okay, now the community here, we had about half of the responses saying he has okay flexibility, and a good number, almost half, say he's got good flexibility, he's gonna fit into a lot of homes. And I'm a bit surprised by that. Okay, I really am. I'm curious what they are. Let me know in the comments. Besides a traditional bounce list or even, the move Human Torch bounce, what are you excited to play Toxin in? Are you thinking some like clog type thing where you put rocks over the board with debris and then you bounce back the rocks? Maybe you have Toxin to kind of counter some of your opponent's cards. I mean, Black Widow did just take a nerf, but if you do see a lot of Widow's Bite, from White Widow, from Widow's Bite, or, maybe your opponent is hitting you with like rocks from Darkhawk and you can play them and bounce them back. Let me know what you're thinking with Toxin. Clearly, a lot of people here have some ideas of other non-bounce archetypes for him to work in, and I'm excited to hear about that. So let me know in the comments down below what it is you're cooking up. Okay, I think you guys are cooking something special here. Now, in terms of being competitive, mostly on the same page here. I think he's going to be good. The community says he's going to be amazing. Okay, Toxin had the absolute best, highest ratings of all the cards this season from that community ratings post, that survey. People think it's going to be insane. Okay, a couple people think it's going to be OP, and it's possible. It is possible. He is a card that is easy to change if he is overpowered. They just make him a 2-0 to start. Okay, very, very easy for second dinner to adjust, his little power level there. Again, I do think it's almost guaranteed that he will work in bounce. He is literally designed for bounce, and just being only the third bounce option we have in the game, he's going to work there. Okay, I think he's going to be good. I'm unsure if he'll be good or amazing, though. Again, if he's better than Beast, he's amazing. If Beast costs discount that he gives to cards that bounce back, chooses to be more impactful and the preferred choice most of the time, then I think Toxin just sits at a good spot and not amazing. Okay, I really do think he kind of competes with Beast for that best bouncer home, but he's going to be good, and the community says he might be a little bit too good. So I'm really interested to see where he lands overall. In terms of my recommendation for Toxin, well, we won't know for sure until he's in the game. I think he's going to be worth getting. Again, we know bounce is strong, right? The archetype is good right now, but we know the ability to bounce cards back is good. And you have very limited options. This is only the third option, as I've mentioned multiple times in this video. Like, that cannot be understated, right? If you are deciding to play bounce right now or in the future, getting Toxin, gives you just that third possible option. You're stuck with 2, you can make it 3. It's still not a ton of options, but it's what it is, right? That's all we've got. And so Toxin is really in a pretty prestigious spot there, pretty desirable, I think. And so even if he isn't as flexible as the community thinks he will be, even if he is just stuck to bounce decks traditionally are very good. This is opposed to last week when I covered Scorn, who I thought would be good in traditional discard decks, which have unfortunately not traditionally been very good. Bounce decks have been very good. So even if Toxin is as niche as Scorn was, well, his decks are just better, is the fact of the matter. Okay, bounce decks are just better than traditional discard. If you look at, the past and what we've seen in the meta, and when decks get OP and out of hand, bounce has been there. Now, just some final reminders is that the safe strategy is always to wait and see. Wait till the card comes out. See how streamers, your friends, whoever is playing, and what they're saying about the card. Go check the Reddit, see what people think. The community, myself included, is wrong about cards all the time. Okay, it is very, very hard to predict new cards and where they will fit in the meta. Sometimes cards don't work as believed. Toxin, I think, is pretty straightforward. I'm not really expecting any surprises there because he should just work like Beast, but we'll have to see to be sure. And then, you should be prioritizing cards that fit your playstyle. If you're not a bounce player and you can't stand playing bounce at all, Even if Toxin is the best card of the season, he may be worth skipping. Okay, if you don't see yourself ever playing Bounce, and if he proves to not be very flexible outside of that archetype. And then great cards get nerfed, and bad cards get buffed all the time. Okay, I mentioned Misery came out, and Second Dinner's already saying they're going to buff Misery to a 4/8. Even though she was worth skipping, Second Dinner might just be committed to making her good enough to be worth playing. Okay, so even the cards that you think are bad might just be good one day, and the cards that are good may be bad. So just get the ones that you think you're going to play, whether they're amazing or just decent, because they fit your playstyle. So again, let me know what you think of Toxin. Let me know if you are part of this community that thinks Toxin is going to be the best card of the season, that thinks he might be a little too good even. And if you have any non-bounce decks to try out with him, let us know what you're cooking up in the comments down below. Until then, stay positive. I'll see you next time.